welcome back to the channel. I am yours truly, and today we got ourselves some Seminopes. Yep, that's right. We're gonna predict the 2023 Florida State Seminoles schedule. Now Let's get to a quick recap of what Florida State did last year. Florida State last year went 9-3, a pretty good season for Florida State. Now, they do return just about everybody on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So there's a ton of hype behind this Florida State team, and rightfully so. The question that I have for Florida State is, which Florida State are we going to get this year? Are we going to get the Florida State that beat LSU in week 1 by a point? Or are we going to get the Florida State that lost to NC State and Wake Forest? So, enough of me rambling about that. And then, of course, the other loss came to Clemson, too. And then they won their bowl game against Oklahoma to get to 10 wins. So, enough about 2022. Let's get into some odds for 2023 for Florida State. As we take a look at Florida State's odds for 2023, the over-under win total for Florida State this year is at 10 exactly. So, if you feel confident that Florida State's going to go 11-1 or better, you bet the over. If you feel confident that Florida State's going to go 9-3 or worse, you bet the under. Now, if you bet either or and Florida State ends up at 10-2, you basically get a push bet, meaning you get your money back that you put in, but you don't win nothing, you don't lose nothing. So, just a quick note to that. Florida State's national title odds is at plus 1,800. So, if Florida State wins the national title, you win $1,800 if you put down a $100 bet that Florida State's going to win, which those are not bad odds for the national title odds right now. And then as far as Florida State winning the ACC, those odds are at plus 160, and they're second biggest favorite to win the ACC, right behind Clemson, which they're not that far behind. So, anyways, let's get right into the schedule. As we take a look at the schedule for 2023 for Florida State, one thing I like to do is look at the schedule to see, trap games, where the hardest games are at, this, that, the other. To me, Florida State's schedule outside the month of September is pretty weak. So I think for Florida State to make a playoff run, they got to go undefeated. Maybe a loss, I don't know. But to me, this schedule looks weak, especially after they get done playing Clemson. You say, well, there's Florida at the end. Well, we'll get to Florida when we get to Florida. Anyways, enough of me rambling about the schedule. Let's get into some winners and losers. The first game on Florida State's schedule is a neutral site game against LSU. Last year they played in New Orleans, and this was a kind of a sloppy game by both sides. Eventually somebody had to win that game, and Florida State won by a blocked PAT. So this year this game is going to get moved from New Orleans to Orlando, and I think this is going to be a very good game between these two teams. A lot of production returning back for both sides, for both Florida State and LSU. This is going to be a very tight game for 4 quarters, and I feel like this game is like you could flip a quarter and whoever it lands on, you wouldn't be mad about whether it lands heads or tails. This is like a pure 50-50 game to me. Right now, I think I would say LSU gets the win here. I think it's just due to to me, it's like a revenge factor for LSU losing. After losing this game last year, they're going to be pumped up to try to get revenge and beat Florida State, and I think they will barely. But I think this is going to be a very tight and good game for week 1 in Orlando. And then next week for Florida State, they play Southern Miss, and that's going to be a 40-50 point win for Florida State. So they're 1-1 at this point. The next game on Florida State's schedule is a road trip to Boston College, and I think this is going to be an easy win for Florida State. Boston College is just a dumpster fire right now in the ACC. That's pretty bad to be the dumpster fire of the ACC. Um, so just there's enough said about Boston College. Let's get to their biggest game of the schedule, which is a road trip to Clemson. Now, Clemson lost their first home game in 40 games to South Carolina last year. However, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden Clemson is a very vulnerable, very weak to play. It's still a very tough place to play. And I imagine this is going to be a Saturday night game for Florida State and Clemson, if ESPN's got anything to say about it. I think this is like another 50-50 game. It could go either way. Um, I'm gonna say Clemson gets the win on this one over Florida State. The next game on Florida State's schedule is a home game with Virginia Tech. They get this game after a bye week the week before, and Virginia Tech, it's just seeing them fall from the graces is just sad in the ACC. They went from dominating the ACC and winning multiple ACC titles in the 2000s to be the laughing stock of the ACC. Yeah, I think Virginia Tech's going to be leaving Florida State with cooked turkeys because Florida State's going to get the win, and it's going to be probably about a 30-point win by Florida State. And then the next game for Florida State is another home game to Syracuse. Syracuse last year, they went 6-0, and then they just fell off a cliff from there. And I'm just not really buying the Dino Babers hype. At this point, I'm surprised he hasn't been fired yet. That's just how much confidence I got in Dino Babers. Yeah, I think Syracuse leaves Florida State with rotten oranges in the fruit stand. So, Florida State at this point is sitting at 4-2 for the season. The next game on Florida State's schedule is a home game with Duke. And Duke was one of the most underrated teams in the ACC last year. They went 8-5, including a bowl win over UCF. So Duke flew under the radar and is one of the most quiet teams in the ACC coming in. However, I think they're going to take a loss to Florida State. So give Florida State the win. And then the next game for Florida State is a road trip to Wake Forest. Now, this part of the schedule can be these next three games for Florida State can be a bit tricky for them because you got back-to-back road games and then you have your rivalry game with Miami. We'll get to those when we get to those. Wake Forest last year, they put up some massive numbers on offense, and Wake Forest even beat Florida State at Tallahassee last year. Now, this year, Florida State has to travel to Wake Forest. Not saying Wake Forest is a very intimidating environment to go play at, but I think Florida State wins this one about 14 points, I would say. So, Florida State at this point is at 6-2 for the season. Like I mentioned before, the next game on the schedule is another road trip to Pitt. And this, to me, if you're looking for a trap game for Florida State, I think this is it for Florida State. This is a road game against Pitt. Pitt is a decent team. I wouldn't say a ACC title contending team, but they're a fairly decent team. And this has recipes of a trap game upset. However, I do think Florida State pulls out a win at Pitt. And then the next game after that is a home game with Miami. Last year, this was a blowout from the opening whistle. Yeah. And I think Miami's going to be a little bit better this year. However, I do not see Miami beating Florida State in Tallahassee. So, yeah, Florida State's going to get the win in this one. Next game for Florida State is a home game in North Alabama. That's a blowout win. Enough said about that. For the final game for Florida State is their rivalry game with Florida. This time they have to go to the Swamp to play Florida. Last year, this game was pretty close, and it shouldn't have been close for Florida State. They were clearly the better team than Florida. However, they let Florida hang around. I think this year, this is going to be a beatdown with Florida, because I think Florida is worse this year than they were last year. But that's just my opinion. I'm just an idiot with a laptop and a microphone. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. So Florida State wins that one, and they go 10-2 for the season. So that wraps up the 2023 schedule prediction for Florida State. And before the Florida State fans come in the comment section, tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, and burn me at the stake, this is still an improvement from last year. Last year in the regular season went 9-3, losing to Wake Forest, Clemson, and NC State all in a row. And 10-2 is better than 9-3. I'm not a math professor, but I think 10-2 is a better season. Their two losses are 50-50 games, so the ceiling can easily be 12-0. The floor for Florida State, meaning the worst possible scenario, is at 8-4 possibly, but we're pounding the sand at this point as far as the floor. So, and unlike most years, the ACC starting this year has scrapped divisions and has went to a 3-6-6 model, or 3-5-5 model, sorry, where it's 3 permanent games, 5 on, 5 off. So even if Florida State loses to Clemson, big deal. Whatever. You're most likely going to meet them again in the conference championship game to get a rematch. Unless you lose 1 or 2 more ACC games, then you're in trouble as far as making the ACC title. Like and comment, subscribe. I make somewhat entertaining videos on this channel. As always, thank you for watching, and thank you all for the support for the channel. It's greatly appreciated by all y'all. And until next time, thank you for watching.